It's an interesting subject that we were invited to speak about, and I'd like to probably start with something. Nu'man mentioned something quite interesting. I'm going to skip bios because bios are available on the app, and I think you can know a lot about their backgrounds. And through the discussion, probably you'll understand more about what they do. But Nu'man, you mentioned something quite interesting earlier on at the lunch, where you spoke about, when you look at hubs, you look at. You gave me a per capita VC spend. Is that what it was?
Correct.
And you said that Israel has what, 400?
Israel has basically $473 per capita invested in VC.
And compared to
and
what?
Compared to Turkey is only $1. And when you look this number in the Middle East and North Africa, is about 33 cents.
33 cents in the Arab world, then.
Arab world, yes.
So we're good at this. We're maintaining a good position.
In 1/3, yeah. And
but India was interesting.
India was about, if I remember correctly, it was 27 or something like that. Yes.
A 1 billion population.
Correct. It's an amazing number. And US is about 300, 350. So Israel has more money per capita spent in technology startups or invested, not spent.
And I mean, let's bring this to a question that Asa was also mentioning. I mean, you basically were talking about, the creation of hubs. You're based out of Dubai.
Yes.
And you've basically lived in the early VC accelerators and the IFC currently today. So where do you see hub creation happening, and why aren't we basically doing that well?
So I think the way to look at it, you need to look at what's the word? You have to have a holistic approach, right? You need to address the ecosystem from idea to early stage, seed, Series A, B, C, and so on and so forth. And what we've been seeing, or what I've been seeing across the various parts of the Arab world specifically, because that's where most of my experience is you have spurs of entrepreneurship or support across different bubbles, but not across the whole ecosystem.
Okay.
So like you were in Amman, Oasis 500. That's an example we should look at. Like you start off, you had this great engine to pump startups. 100, 140 companies came out of that program. But there was no continuity. A lot of these companies either died, went to other places chasing the buck. So addressing the ecosystem across the board is one of the key things that I've been seeing here.
And Omar, I guess we have to, I always look at, when people mention Abraj, I want to thank Abraj for Fadi Ghandour. I mean, you created Fadi, and he was so generous in giving back to the community. So, not years back, 10 years, 15 years back, the word startup and ecosystem and hubs wasn't that fancy and available and abundant. But you have made investments that give hope. I mean, you spoke about the sectors that you're looking at. And
absolutely.
You could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Fadi is a close friend of the firm and also a story that we're very proud of as well. I mean, Aramex is now the largest logistics company in the Middle East and North Africa, and growing and expanding globally as well. And I think that's one entrepreneur that when you look at who's really given back to the community, right? Because WAMDA is a great vehicle that's providing that ecosystem for entrepreneurs to invest and also really benefit from the knowledge and experience that he's accumulated over these years. And more importantly, I think, look at where Aramex is going, right? So if you look at Aramex, it's no longer a logistics company. It's a technology company, and the thing what's facilitating the growth and expansion of that platform is technology. Similarly, to your point, we're investing across all our markets in technology. So, unlike these gentlemen, we're not early stage venture capital investors, we're late stage investors, but clearly technology is here to stay in our market. So if you look at Hepsi Burada, which is our largest investment in Turkey, it's the dominant e-commerce player. When you look at, I believe in stats and numbers, you look at all the electronics offline players, they're either facing negative growth or very limited growth. We grew 100% last year.
But you mentioned in that example that you actually incubated ideas. And so although you're a late stage investor, you invested in these entities, but within the culture of that entity itself, you're basically promoting innovation and promoting, spending things outside of the platform. So.
I mean, look, it's a great example. I mean, so for us, let's say, I'll continue with the Hepsi Burada example. We've incubated our own last mile logistics company. So this was a new team, completely put together from scratch, and their sort of mandate is to solve the last mile delivery issue. So, you know, in Turkey, yes, you have very strong logistics, but when you get to the B2C level, it's not very strong. And in order for e-commerce to become more and more dominant in our markets, you need to solve the last mile delivery issue. So we incubated that business. Same thing with the payments gateway. We set up a payments gateway business with a separate team, incubated them within our business. And then separately, we're looking at players that we can acquire because, you know, Turkey has a robust, bench of good businesses that keep coming up with unique solutions which are relevant to Hepsiburada or other businesses.
But we keep talking about hubs, Yani, right? And we talk about the US, East Coast, West Coast. Is it a fair comparison, Nu'man, to keep saying, then you look at the US and you're sitting here in Istanbul, the complexities of these markets, the language differences, the multiple borders, the geographies. How do you handle that? And when you talk about creating a hub or pushing seed stage investment and building a pipeline?
I mean, if you compare with US or Turkey or MENA, Oman or Dubai or even, let's say, Berlin or London, each specific hubs, they have their own challenges. I mean, especially in emerging markets, you have a lot of different challenges with the socio-political things, economic issues, and all the other stuff, and plus ecosystem is still evolving. So what we need to do is instead of basically looking for those things and comparing us and saying, oh, okay, in Silicon Valley they do this, or Berlin they do this, let's do this one in Istanbul, or let's do this one in Dubai. What we should be looking is basically looking at our situation and where we are, and then look what we have in our hand and utilize this one the best way, and create our own ecosystem, own hubs. And we need to do that. And I think right now, as I look in the Middle East and Balkans and Turkey and all these emerging markets, hubs are coming up. But I think one thing which we need to do is we need to start collaborating together between those countries and between those regions, more about basically expanding our startups to the different regions or sending startups to the different kind of hubs, and then getting more different, understanding those cultures and understanding the challenges on those things so that they can be more regional players, not only stuck within their own small world.
But I mean, the numbers should be working for us, right? I mean, if you add Pakistan, that's a 200 million population. You have Iran, 80 million plus?
80 million, yeah.
You've gone as far as Morocco, basically, and looked at, I mean, you oversee a region, yani, not only and you're sitting in Dubai, but you're looking at a regional play, yani. Yeah. So why aren't the numbers working for us?
Well, I think one of the key challenges we have, like I'm just talking about MENA now, like Pakistan to a certain extent, even Turkey, we label it MENA, but it's just a bunch of different countries working in different bubbles and different silos. And there is no, the skill transfer is available, so human capital can move to a certain extent, but businesses can't function across different geographies. So to launch a business in Dubai is completely different than launching a business in Saudi Arabia or Morocco. There are certain cultural differences, there's a lot of similarities, but there are borders. There are obstacles for that growth. So I agree with the point that you made. Allowing for synergies works. And I have yet to see a successful story. There are a few, but not many, that have migrated from Turkey to the Middle East or vice versa. So I think Kareem was here earlier today. They just launched here or are in the process of launching here. You know, that is an example, potentially something that could work. Taking localized, transportation that works in various countries in the Middle East, shifting it, allowing it to work here. And you're seeing a lot more of that, but it's still miles away.
I mean, I agree. I mean, there are some examples, but that examples is only a handful. I mean, we have a couple in our portfolio, like Insiders, open an office in Dubai and sell in Saudi and Qatar and all the other countries, Kuwait. But when you look this one, it's only literally handful companies. And because it's, I mean, we call it MENA, right? Middle East, North Africa is about
400 million?
17 people, 17 countries,
yes.
400 million, but even Arabic is not the same, dialects are different.
That's
I mean, and culture are different, customs and all that. So when you start putting all those things in, it's like the soup, but it doesn't taste anything. It's a big chunk of everything is mixed. So you can't really address everything in one shot and say, okay, I'm in Middle East. No, you can't.
Well, should we look at, I mean, I don't know, I look at Abraj sometimes and I say, I mean, if you look at it, should we be innovative in creating a kingmaker? You're a late stage investor and you need a pipeline. Should you be looking at the total value chain and starting to nudge people in specific directions and try to make them work for you so that at one point in time, you see that entity that you can put money behind as a late-stage investor?
Look, so I think one of the key things we look for is businesses that can scale not only sort of domestically and be domestic champions, but also be regional champions. And when I started investing in Turkey more than 10 years ago, 2007 is when we started, a lot of the Turkish growth was so prevalent that people were only focused on the Turkish story. And so when you spoke to entrepreneurs, they were completely focused on what can you do for me in Turkey, how can you add value for me in Turkey. And now the dialogue is very different. Mm-hmm. The dialogue is all about, yes, we've got Turkey covered, what can you do for us in our regional expansion? And that's really the beauty of the Abraj model. I mean, we're a global private equity firm. We cover the South-South.
You made investments in Argentina. I mean, you've gone that far in terms of...
Look, we've done investments in Peru, Colombia, Chile. We just did an investment in Chile. So pretty much the South-South corridor is where we focus because the numbers tell the story. I mean, 50% of the world's GDP is coming from our markets. 70% of the GDP growth projected through 2030 is going to be coming from emerging markets, what we call growth markets. The median age of our countries is 28. The demographics are so strong, the growth story is so strong, you have to be in these markets. So in the end, you've got to look for players who can not only capture the domestic growth story, but have the capability and willingness to go regionally as well.
But every time I hear numbers, right, I mean, the numbers keep shouting in our face, basically. Still, we don't see enough capital being pumped in at these different stages that Asa mentioned, that we need to see a fair share of more accelerators, more seed stage companies. And even outside the ecosystem that we call startups. I mean, you look at the legacy families and the family businesses, don't they see these numbers and why aren't they reacting in the same way that you three are?
I mean, look, they are. I mean, look at if you take Koch Group, and what they just did in Arçelik. You gave the example of Pakistan. They just bought the largest white goods player in Pakistan. They look at the numbers. The company is generating, it's trading at 6 times EBITDA. It's got 20% EBITDA margins. It's growing at 30, 40%. So they are looking at those numbers now, and I think that is something that you're seeing more and more happening. On the funding side, we see the same thing in private equity, by the way. We go to large US pension funds, endowments, large families. They don't want to write a $50 million check for Turkey. They want someone who gives them a global solution for emerging markets and says, look, we're going to write a $500 million check. I don't want to decide if 10% goes to Turkey, 5% goes to Africa, 20% goes to Asia. They want someone that provides them a global solution for their emerging market problems. And really, there's no one out there. I mean, Abraj is probably the only global markets player. Actis has tried and they've struggled, but I think this is why, there is even the same issue in private equity. Forget the venture capital in early stage.
Mm-hmm. But then, I mean, bringing Asa back in, I mean, you're now in a way, I could say, you're like creating hubs and by investing behind accelerators. Mm-hmm. I mean, are we doing enough to support accelerators in different countries and geographies to build that pipeline and deal flow that we need?
Well, I think to answer that, you need to take a step back. Okay. Look at the past 5-10 years, and that's where really entrepreneurship, that trend is becoming more prevalent. Historically, people investing in this part of the world have been, taking the safe bets. Real estate, traditional, brick and mortar type of business, very safe bets. Give me the yield that I'm looking for, have continuity, leave a legacy for my kids, so on and so forth. That's changing now, right? So I think countries like the UAE, Turkey, across the board, they're realizing the SMEs are the core for the economy and for that economy to grow. And I think over the next 18 months, like I have visibility for over $500, $600, $700 million that are being pumped into that ecosystem.
Coming from where?
Across
from the region or coming from
the region and abroad. So people are changing their mindset.
But is it private money? Is it a private institution? Or is it still the EIBs and the EBRDs?
It's DFIs, it's private money,
why aren't we seeing the local people? We talk about youth and we talk about unemployment. We talk about 70% unemployment is going to explode on our face soon. Where are these hubs that are basically going to try to solve these problems for us could be startup hubs?
I think we are missing one thing. Is basically when you look back 6-7 years ago, I mean, how many VCs were out there? I mean, 212 is only, 5 years old? Mm-hmm. We are in the year 6. And at 7 years ago, when I moved back to Turkey, we didn't have any VC in Turkey. Mm-hmm. So, same thing in Dubai, I understand that point. I mean, but again, ecosystem is just happening. So
but I mean,
you
just
can't
happening.
expect...
I like the word Sam was saying. You know, the Fortune 500 companies stepping down from X number of years to 5 years now, potentially 10.
Yes.
Are we running with the speed we need to run with?
Can it be better? Absolutely.
Are we running with that speed, or are we slow? I mean, so.
Well, I think we're running with that.
Look, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. I mean, we have a Turkey fund, $500 million that we're raising, and we're in the same situation as Isa is. I could deploy fourfold that amount in the next 3 years. We see great opportunities. You know, yes, we talk about the political headwinds, and we talk about the sort of currency headwinds and all of those issues that come up in Turkey, but you got to focus on the fundamentals. How does a business like Hepsiburada grow 100%? In a year like 2016,
and let's look at
because
Cairo,
the demand and the demographics justify that kind of growth. So the challenge is finding the right businesses, the right partners, and also helping to give them the right technology and know-how when we come into those businesses, right? Because when we go into a business, it's not about writing a check. It's really about a partnership approach of coming in, creating value together. And that is where we not only find a gap, sometimes not just the money, but are the promoters are ready to have a partnership, right? So they may really want the money, but then they don't want to have you on board as a member of this partnership driving the growth collaboratively. And that's where we spend a lot of time.
How can we make crisis work for us now, man? I mean,
sorry?
Crisis. I mean, look at, we talk about hubs. You talk about Cairo now saying that you can't ship out dollars.
Yeah.
So what does that do to the hub?
They relaxed a little bit on that.
Oh, they have?
Cairo,
That's good news. I mean, if you have an update, please share with everybody.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
everybody would love to know these good news. But I mean, we're a stressed spot in the world, Yanni. So is that helping us build hubs and these continuous comparisons to, I mean, why aren't you doing enough?
It's basically, being in emerging market, you have a lot of challenges, right? I mentioned this one. I mean, cultural challenges, everything. So, and yes, there are more VCs, yes, a lot of accelerators. I mean, you were in one of them before, and all the other stuff happening now, Abraj or IFC, that we are all investing, VCs are investing. But I think this is a chicken and egg thing. I mean, as long as, if we don't have more exits, then people will be saying, okay, I'm investing, what is next for me? So for me as a VC, I think the long term, 7, 8 years. If I was in US, maybe 4 or 5 years.
So what's the exit strategy? How do we build exits?
I think only way that you build the exit, you build
a new market for exits?
Only way that you build the exit, you build a successful company, running up business, and at least the regional business. Then people will come after you.
Can exits happen locally? I mean, I always have this issue with the money that's coming in. How much it is local money? How much it is coming from institutions like, again, so do you think that the local markets can build up exits?
Well, it's changing, right?
Okay.
So over the past 6 months, you've had people like STC throwing money into hundreds of millions of dollars into companies that are growing, and I think that trend is happening. Okay. So I think the fundamentals are there. It just takes time, as you mentioned. So let's take, I'll take an example from Middle East. You know, the Hepsiburada of Middle East, Souk 10 took 10 years to get to where it is, 10 plus years to get to where it is. Kareem took half of that, right?
Okay. Or Kareem is half, but look at EasyCo. I mean, they were here before the launch on the panel. I mean, first round and first $5 million was much harder than raising $13 million.
But are they raising it from where?
Us and some local money, and IFC invested in the second round, and then again from European VC.
So I guess I keep highlighting this issue. Is it the matter of how fast, what type of velocity do we need so that we can be startup hubs and destinations for people to build businesses from this region and thrive globally, as Omar mentioned?
But before going that one, I just want to mention something here. I mean, if you look at the numbers in Europe, right? A lot of European VCs, they normally write the lower number tickets. They are a little bit more conservative on investing in the startups. But whenever an American VC enters any European companies, they end up coming up with the same number and even more money to do those companies. So it means even in Europe is still learning this business, seriously.
So are we comparing ourselves to the wrong spot? I mean, should we compare ourselves to somebody like Europe, multilingual? The EU is a lot of countries.
Even within EU, they have the similar challenges. But I mean, a lot of VCs in EU, whenever American comes, they invest more money. Same, even local VCs, they say, oh, I may not want to invest this one, but whenever somebody foreign VC comes in, they say, okay, I'm ready to invest more money. So it means everybody's learning. I mean, like your entrepreneurs are learning the ecosystem, how to bring the startup to the business. a lot of investors also still learning the ecosystem. They are still in their first phases.
Yeah, and like everything we're talking about is less than 10, 15 years old, right?
That's a good point.
It's still nascent.
Yes.
People are learning. It takes time to develop that skill set, the understanding, that appetite to that asset class. But it's getting easier, right? So we've had our first round of funds. So you've been operating for
5 years.
5 years. Your second, third fund is coming along.
Absolutely.
You learn from
Very
that
soon.
experience. You invest more. You double down. You grow that ecosystem. The accelerators are out there. So like I was looking at the number the other day in Dubai alone. I think 15 launched over the past 12 months. 15. Good or bad, that's a different conversation. But 15 programs launched.
Yeah.
Well, then, I mean, that's a good thing to have. But always, for me, numbers are always, when they go up, I mean, it's always good news. Like you said, we need to see the results out of it. But, I mean, one element that the discussion on Kareem today, his emphasis was, and what Detha was saying, and we should focus on solving local problems, right? Mm-hmm. So do we have also in the space enough local solutions local problems being solved, or are we really still not organic, but really bringing, copying? Do we have enough R&D centers, R&D facilities? I mean, what's missing in that space? Is government doing enough, I guess?
I think, historically, we've seen a lot of copycat type of mentality. That, for me, is not a problem, right? You take an existing global model that works and adapt it to your local ecosystem. If copycats didn't exist, you'd have one car company globally, one tissue manufacturer, one this, one that. So that works. Adapting to local needs is a key part of the solution. It's such a global market right now.
But the stickiness, I mean, when you make investments, do you make investments into is it a copycat? I mean, or is it, it's a high risk thing for you, or what do you think? I mean,
the copycat, I mean, I 100% agree with the sound there. I mean, copycat means that, I mean, you have to take the business model and apply to your local market. You have to understand your local market. You need to know them. You need to understand so that you can actually sell it to them. You can't just take the same model and then exactly the same one-to-one and then try to apply. Otherwise, any foreign company can enter the Turkey and then will able to do the business. And so they wouldn't buy the Yemen, for example. Delivery Hero bought Yemen not because, I mean, they couldn't enter the market. It was faster and much efficient. They already captured the market. So it means that you have to take the model and apply it to the local things, local requirements, local culture, everything, and then dominate the market. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is okay. Absolutely. I mean, look, if you look at any example, right, like in the new economy, if you look at last mile delivery in Turkey, you cannot assume that the same model that you've been applying in the US or Europe is going to work in Turkey. Mm-hmm. Forget Turkey. If you're in Istanbul, the delivery model that has to be adapted is going to be very different than what you're going to do in the rest of Turkey or Anatolia. So these are local solutions that need to be developed by local teams. It's not as easy as Amazon just coming into Turkey and saying we're going to take over the market. It's not that easy. So
complexity in a way is protecting our hubs.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, yeah, but that's your unique edge, right? Okay. You need to find local problems and address those problems through solutions. And that's the whole point of entrepreneurship.
We all live in emerging markets, right? I mean, in Istanbul and Amman, Dubai and everything. I mean, every day we live in some challenges. We live in some problems. We just look around and we say, oh shit, okay, what am I gonna do this? All the inefficiencies. Mm-hmm. In even professional, I mean, big companies still, even small SMEs, they have a lot of inefficiencies. And that's what startups are. So
I guess
I feel that there are a lot of opportunities.
We're not talking to each other enough, I guess, when we are solving problems.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been traveling. I mean, you guys seen me in Middle East more than maybe you see me in Istanbul. But I mean, I've been traveling. I see that a lot of similar problems. Everybody's facing the similar problems. That's why any startups can start in Istanbul, can go to the Middle East much easier than they go to the US, to be honest. And for those Turkish startups, it's easier to go to Middle East than it's easier to go to there because our American companies go to the Middle East. Because the culture is much similar. Lifestyle and challenges are similar. And same thing the Middle Eastern company, and that's a Jordanian-based company that come to Istanbul, much easier than going to America and trying to solve the problem because problems are similar here.
Should we expect more from government to support these hubs, becoming startup hubs?
I think governments should fuel the fundamentals of the ecosystem, lay down the foundation, maybe support in certain areas, but not manage it directly. That's not my personal opinion on it. Build the foundation.
Yeah.
And let the private sector deal with it.
Correct.
Some insights. Turkey today, for example, is the bankruptcy law in favor of building a startup or not?
No. It takes 2 years to shut down the company, minimum.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting nightmare.
Very interesting.
So is that the case abroad? Is that a case in multiple countries?
Yeah.
Sorry?
As a board member,
Yep.
if company has some debt to the government, I can be in prison.
Yeah, personally liable.
Yep.
You're
Right.
personally liable.
So you add insult to injury, I guess.
Ah, yeah.
So not only do you make an investment, you take a personal risk in
Correct.
keeping that. So
And
do
I
you,
still continue to invest.
and how do we say we want to be hubs, basically, if the regulations also don't favor?
But that's what I meant by
Right.
laying the foundation. So
So the
bankruptcy
foundations for you
laws,
are regulations,
regulations,
fund laws. Yes.
fund laws.
Okay.
They don't exist, right? I think Dubai has a fund law. Jordan doesn't, for example. A bankruptcy, and that's across the whole
across the
region,
board.
right? I know Dubai just recently announced something about that
And
space.
as the
but still,
IFC, as the World Bank, or as abroad even, we're looking at your different investments, is there a collective effort to try to influence these regulations to the favor of being startup hubs and being hubs in this region?
I think instead of collective, a lot of separated, I mean, when we talk to each other, we say, okay, we try to basically talk with the government, ministries or some other agencies here also, to give them the direction, like angel investment law in Turkey came a couple of years back. We give a lot of feedback to there.
What's that law?
It's basically they start to give some tax breaks for the angel investments in Turkey.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
it wasn't good enough, but still it was a good process the government initiated.
So
It's
if an
not they
angel
are
invests in a startup, you basically get a
some
tax reduction,
breaks for their
tax breaks,
earnings
okay.
and all the other stuff. So, I mean, some good steps are taken, but again, I 100%, I mean, government should basically stay back. Only thing they should do is put the fundamentals, like make sure that regulations or environment space are available for entrepreneurs or investors to come and then invest in there.
Yeah,
but they shouldn't be one of the
Mm-hmm.
players.
Well, when we talk about hubs, right, when you talk about, let's say, the West Coast, you talk about Silicon Valley, we all keep mentioning, and I had an interesting discussion here where it rotated, it was anchored by a campus, a university, Stanford, okay? So do we have academic institutions that can, we should, come together around them and try to make them our own Stanfords across the board? I mean, you look at the engineers coming out of institutions. I mean, you in Pakistan have evolved scientifically in so many areas. Are we missing on that opportunity, or are we not spending enough time to make them our anchor for our hubs?
I think a lot more needs to be done. I mean, I think one of the benefits of Turkey is the fact that the quality of the students that are educated and graduate every year. But I think at the same time, the ecosystem for them to thrive and become entrepreneurs isn't necessarily there. I know there are initiatives in place like with E2 where they have these technology campuses and allow these these people to set up. But I think there's a lot more that needs to be done because that ecosystem will facilitate the development of other businesses in the
You
area.
like the numbers, right?
Yes.
In Turkey, there are about 36 technoparks.
36?
Technoparks, which
What-
means
what is
like
the
a
techno-
technology, they are basically together with universities and they try to innovate the new technologies and bring in new startups or new technology firms to accommodate there so that university professors or attendants can actually do some projects there. So 37 technoparks, but when you look at as basically most of the companies in technoparks, they're focused on the projects, not the product. So as a result, you end up basically having amazing technology companies, really good stuff, good people, good projects they release, but then after they finish the project, they get their project money and they focus on the completely separate project.
Oh, so they're not solving
No
the problem.
product evolution.
There's no product evolution.
So as a result, it's not a startup.
It's not
more
building a deal
service.
flow.
Yes.
So great, 36 parks, but not basically translating
that
into
has
making
to
you a
change in
better
the cultural way.
a
You
hub
have to change
more or
this,
less.
yes.
Yani.
Yeah.
But it's happening. It's slowly happening.
Like you see that in other countries, like look at Egypt, look at Jordan. These are very technically savvy. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of human capital, but there is no culture for R&D. You're comparing to Israel. That's one of the key fundamentals that made that venture ecosystem, got it to where it is because of that. There's a lot of changes, but there is no fundamentally like an R&D culture.
Why? Why? Because the reward is different. R&D reward in most universities in Middle East and Turkey are basically you get some funding from government, do the R&D, which is your PhD or whatever, and then after you finish as a test or prototype, you basically, your funding finish, and then you go on some other R&D parts. 2 minutes, all right. And however, in Israel or in US, private companies subsidize you. They say, like MIT Labs is a perfect example. They have 200 members, and then they pay yearly membership to seek which entrepreneur, which idea they want to sponsor it to make a monetized idea. commercialize the product.
Let's try to wrap up with some closing comments. I mean, what would be the one big thing that you would want to see
I wish there was one big
realized? Yeah, it's a tough question, right? But that can make Istanbul a hub. That can make Karachi or I even saw Peshawar 2.0. Can make it a hub. What can make Amman or Dubai a hub? What's that one big thing that you think can really make a difference?
I will say that government basically made the ecosystem much more entrepreneur and investor friendly.
Okay.
I think education, really, solving that education system, providing that ecosystem as, people graduate and providing them opportunity to launch these businesses.
Yeah. And I would say the entrepreneurs itself, like push a bit more. Like, it would be great, like if we come next year and we find 2-3 times more people here, right?
Yes.
Pushing. I think capital is available right now. I think the fundamentals are there. Governments are helping. The foundations are getting there. It's up to the entrepreneurs now to take that leap of faith and not go get a cushioned job and actually
Let's hope for the best. Yeah. And with that, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
I hope it was insightful for everybody, and let's basically give them a great round of applause. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.